Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Tom Banchoff. I'm the director of the Berkley Center. It's great to have you here for discussion with Yu on Confucianism in China today. Thanks for coming down, especially on such a beautiful day, to spend some time with us reflecting on what is a fascinating topic with a long history, but with some real contemporary significance, as we'll see. I thought I would introduce Yi to you, and then he will speak for about 30 minutes, at which point he'll join us at the table for some informal conversation, and we'll be able to get into the topic from different points of view. So Dr. Yu is a postdoctoral fellow here at the Berkley Center. As many of you know, this year we have an annual competition for a leading young scholar of religious studies based in China to come to Georgetown and spend some time with us. And he's been here since last summer and has been part of our various research projects, and has been a great friend and colleague here at the center. His home base, as you can see, is the Department of History at the University of Shanghai, where he is a lecturer in history, as well as the executive director of the Center for the Study of Religion and Society. And I'm sure when we get to question and answer, if you're curious about the landscape of religious studies in China, that might be something we want to explore. Yi has already published widely on topics related to theories of religion and globalization, religion in China, Christianity in China in particular. His doctoral dissertation, the revised dissertation, was published earlier this year by Shanghai University Press with the title, in Chinese, right? There's no English translation yet. Religion and Politics in Global Context. He's also published several articles, including articles on national identity and Chinese Christianity, related to the broader topic today, of course, of the Chinese philosophical and religious tradition and how it relates to the contemporary social and political scene. So Yi, it's been wonderful to have you with us this year, and we look forward to your reflections on the topic and to discussion. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks you all for coming and attention. Also, I want to use this opportunity to thank the Berkley Center for this postdoctoral fellowship. I had a very pleasant life here in the past several months, and I also learned a lot from different professors in the center. I'm not an expert on Confucianism in China, for it's so large a topic to be a specialty for a young scholar. But I happened to do some research on the relationship between Christianity and Confucianism in China. And I told Tom, a Chinese scholar of religious studies should know more about Confucianism than foreigners. So I hope this is an interesting topic for you today. The presentation will begin with this picture. At the beginning of this year, a new statue of Confucius was statued in the Tiananmen Square as a new symbol to accompany Chairman Mao. So for a lot of scholars, this seems like ideological change in China. That means with President Hu's calling for a Harmonious Socialist Society. That's a combination of Confucianism and Marxism. It's very interesting because I didn't think it means a lot for most Chinese, but for scholars as well as for religious persons, it really means a lot, both domestically and internationally. For me, as a scholar, first, Confucianism in contemporary China is an intellectual problem. I can show you some stars. That first guy is Tan Enjia, that's the dean of the Confucian Academy in Hong Kong. For in Hong Kong, Confucianism is one of the 6 main religions. So that means he is the leader of Confucianism as a religion in Hong Kong. And the middle one is Jiang Qing. which are independent scholar and a leading figure to make Confucianism a religion and even a state religion in contemporary China. And the right person, Professor Du Weiming from Harvard University, I think most professors will know him well. There should be a famous star I can show you later, I promise. But here for these three as examples. But there are more funny things. You can see this. I don't know how this movie is popular in the United States, but in 2010, it defeated all the Chinese movies in the same period. And the most heard one is Confucius, directed by a female director with some political background. So they have to try to do something to to restrict the play or this American movie and to promote the Chinese movie. So there's a Chinese scene during this period, as James says that Confucius, your mom asked you to go back to watch Avatar. So it's we can see that always the promotion of Confucianism always means a lot to Christianity and China-U.S. relationships. So now I think we need to go back to the history to see how Confucianism has become a modern issue in China. That's Kang Youwei. It's the leading scholar of the political reform in 1898. And that political reform is just after the China-Japanese War in 1895. Kang know a lot about the Christians because they know some very well-known missionaries in China at that period, like Timothy Richard from Baptist Society, British Baptist Society, and young Allen from Methodist South United States, and Gilbert Reed from Presbyterian Church. And a very famous magazine, a missionary magazine at that period, which took the lead of the modernization in China, is the Wanguo Gongbao. The English name is Review of the Times. Kang learned a lot from these missionaries about Christianity, and he felt the threat from imperialism, colonialism, as well as Christianity as a cultural tool. So he tried to reform Confucianism in a Christian way, just to counterback the influence of Christianity in China. And then he thinks it's a cultural way to save China and to push the modernization process of China. But something happened. In 1905, the civil service examination was abolished. That means the dissolution of the social foundation of Confucian in traditional China. That's the dissolution of the gentry scholar or official scholar class. Then in 1912, the Qing dynasty itself cracked down. And so even the political support of Confucianism was nothing now. And the leader of the Republican Revolution, Dr. Sun Yat-sen himself, was an example. Sun, not like other Chinese, he didn't attend the civil service examination, but he joined the missionary school. And he himself converted to Christianity later. And one important thing with this new republic is that first time in Chinese history, there's a declaration about religious freedom. With the provisional constitution, it declares that all people of the republic are equal regardless of race, class, and religion. And all people have religious freedom. For Christians, it means a lot because before that, Christians are also called aliens in China. They are called the watchdogs of the Western imperialism. And now, with this legal guarantee, they became part of the Chinese population. But for the Confucian scholars, it means another thing. For them, it's like a way to promote Christianity in China and a threat to Confucianism as a dominant ideology and a popular culture. So a story and also a war happened inside and outside the Congress, both in the political and in the cultural field. The left guy is Chen Huanzhang, is a disciple of the Kang Youwei, and also a PhD from Columbia University. And he founded the Confucius Society to promote Confucianism in the Republican China, and also united other famous ones to make Confucianism the state religion. The middle person is Yuan, a traitor of the political reform in 1898, and became the new president of the republic. But his real dream is to become a new emperor rather than president. So the Confucius Society really got some support from both the national and the local governors. So who is the Protestants? Then the Christians, both Protestants and the Catholicism, united together to argue for religious freedom and to protest against the state religion proposal. Chen Jingyi later became the most paramount Protestant leader in China in 1920s. And Ma Xianbo is the most famous Catholic in modern China as the founder of 3 Catholic universities. That's Zhendang, Fudan, and the Furen Catholic University. So we can see it's not only a cultural matter, but both political and all kinds of things combined together. At last, Christians won this game, but it's not a guarantee for modern China. In the 20th century, revolution is the most important topic. Then through the new cultural movement and the May 4th movement, we can see the cultural and the political trend. First, with the establishment of Republican China, Confucianism was criticized as something backward. So they tried to, as the new political regime, they tried to replace Confucianism with democracy and freedom from the West. So there's an anti-Confucian trend in early Republic of China. But it soon shifted to the anti-religion trend because democracy and science as the 2 most important themes in this area. And it changed to anti-Christianity soon with the anti-Christian movement in 1920s because Christianity, especially the missionary schools, was criticized as instrumental of imperialism in China. And then through the Republican era, that's from 1912 to 1949, there's a national consecration of Confucius, especially during the China-Japanese War. And Confucianism became a source of Chinese nationalism. Sure, later it's very funny that during the Cultural Revolution, Confucius was connected with the counter-revolutionaries, was criticized with the gun of four. We can see these 2 guys, the Generalissimo Chiang Kai-shek and Chairman Mao, the 2 most prominent figures in 20th century China, the enemy of life, but they shared a lot. So internally, they both are Confucians. Even Chiang Kai-shek converted to Christianity in 1930 to marry his beautiful wife. They really share the Confucian ideas with proportion of Confucianism as the source of nationalism. But as an academic topic, Confucianism is mainly an intellectual problem, especially with the new Confucianism trend. It's a counterback to the May 4th movement in early 20th century. They try to combine both the Chinese and the Western philosophy and to adapt the tradition to modernity. Xiong Shili is a founding scholar of the new Confucian school. He's a figure during the May 4th movement. And his 3 most prominent disciples, Han, Mo, and Xu, later became the pillars of New Confucianism in China. They published a New Confucian Manifest in 1958. try to talk Confucianism in a global context. And sure, Du Weiming is a representative of New Confucianism, a third generation. So is there a Confucian revival in China now? We can see there are a few different dimensions. The first is the economic dimension with an economic miracle in 1980s. That's the Asian tigers. So there's as a response to Max Weber's thesis on Protestant ethic and the spirit of capitalism. So there's a debate on Confucianism and the capitalism in Asia. A few very top scholars joined this debate, like Peter Berkley and the Chinese historian Yu Yinshi from Princeton. Yu even wrote a new book about Confucianism and Asian capitalism, or Chinese capitalism. And the second is the cultural dimension. In the 1980s, Christianity was thought as a source of the westernization or modernization in China. So a lot of scholars try to promote Christian culture. But in 1990s, there's a trend to cultural conservatism with the rising of Chinese nationalism. The third is the political dimension. That means ideological shift from Marxism to cultural nationalism with the China economic growth. And I think President Hu's calling for Harmonious Society is a symbol of this trend. The fourth is the religious dimension, with a few scholars try to make Confucianism a religion and even a state religion in China. And there's also a national celebration of Confucius' birthday every year, and also a lot of popular belief of Confucian in China, like to let children to recite the Confucian classics and some Confucian society, and we know Confucianism is really a religion in Hong Kong and in East Asia, so with different meanings. And the last is the global dimension with the Confucius Institutes all over the world. In fact, the first time I came to the United States is invited by the Confucius Institute of the University of Maryland. So it's very interesting now with so lot of Confucius Institutes. Though they just, their main job is to teach Chinese, but for most people it means an export of China's soft power. So for these 5 dimensions, which one is most important? It's really hard to tell. For I think the Chinese are very good at synthesis rather than distinction. So always with a single event, we can say it's a combination of different dimensions. I can show you something. That's the famous star I promise. So this lady, I don't think she is beautiful either from Chinese or American perspective, but she is very famous for teaching Confucian classics in CCTV. That's China's central television station. So she really became a star as a very famous professor in Beijing Normal University now. So you can tell this as a cultural dimension or entertainment dimension or economic dimension. It's very hard to tell. And this one is more interesting. After the 2 World Buddhist Forums and the 1 Taoist World Forum, the former director of SARA, Mr. Ye Xiaowen, sponsored a World Forum on Confucianism in Confucius' hometown last year. That's Nishan Mountain. So with that forum, there's also a consecration of Confucius in this place. And they built this new city. So it's like traditional China. And you can see they dressed like the traditional way. So it's very sometimes you can say it's beautiful, But for most Chinese, it's an economic thing. It's not a cultural matter. I want to say something more about Confucianism as a religion because it's a very important discussion both in China and in the overseas Chinese world. This professor is a founding director of Institute of World Religions in Cass. He just passed away in 2009. In the 1980s, he directed a debate on Confucianism as a religion from a Marxist perspective. And later on, his disciples continued this discussion till now. They even published a journal, the Confucianism. So you can say that's a discussion on, literally that means Confucian religion, Confucius religion, or sacred religion. 三教 or the three teachings in China. So what's the meaning of the Confucian revival in contemporary China? I think there are two dimensions. First, it's domestic, and the second is international. For China itself, does Confucianism mean political ideology, intellectual tradition, or popular culture? I think Confucian played all these three roles in traditional China. But how about contemporary China? Maybe we can use religious terms like political religion, civil religion, or popular religion in China today. And the second matter is about the thesis on clash of civilizations, especially with China's U.S. relationship as great powers in this century. We can see they have very different emphasis. For United States, you like to talk democracy and civil society. And now I know that this term civil society was forbidden in the media, public media. So for Chinese, always pay more attention to the welfare or the political order rather than the abstract ideas like democracy and the civil society. Really, that's important. But I think Chinese are very practical. So they think food is the most important for most Chinese. 吃饱肚子, I haven't had food today, so that's not important for me. But I can't answer all these questions. But I just try to, to propose different thinking ways in China and the United States. As two great powers, they have different interests and also different ideas. So that's very interesting. Tom just published a book about religion and global politics or human rights. So after the United States issues a human rights report about China at once published a report about human rights in the United States. Well, that's really funny. So when we talk about Confucianism in China, we really need to talk about how about the way, the role of Christianity in China. Recently, I heard some very sad news about church worship in Beijing. They are forbidden to buy a worshiping place, so they have to worship outside. So there are a lot of debate among the Chinese scholars. So that picture is the traditional place to do sacrifice to heaven. And this is a cross in Hong Kong. So I need to talk about the Confucianism as Chinese tradition. So what's its role in contemporary China? We also need to talk about the relationship between Confucianism and Christianity in China now. So there are two dimensions, I think. At last, I want to show you this picture. That is the first Jesuit to China, the Matthew Ricci. And that guy, the Chinese guy, Hu Guangqi, is a high official during that period. Always, we like to use this picture to show the cultural exchange between China and the West. You can see Ricci dressed like a Confucian, and then also Hu Guangqi as a high official who passed the imperial examination and became a Catholic, even a pillar of Catholicism in Ming Dynasty. And they shared the interest both in mathematics, philosophy, and in faith. And this Taiji Tu is a traditional Chinese traditional way to mean harmony. But I think the bottom one is more interesting and more important. I will tell you where this picture comes from. It's a log, or it's a Chongqing College, or Chinese University of Hong Kong, where I got my PhD there. So it's a Christian college, and inherited the tradition of the 13 Christian colleges before 1949. And we can see the cross. It's a cross of Nestorians in 7th century during the Tang Dynasty. And under it, we can see the lotus and the clouds to represent Buddhism and Taoism respectively. And the motto of this college is a Confucian one. That means to be the best morally. And the Chongqing College literally means believe in Christ. Really, there's another college, because this is the only university use a British college system. So there's another college. It's the base of the New Confucianism. So all three disciples of Xiong, the majority of the New Confucianism in 1950s taught in that college. That's a New Asia College, also sponsored by the Yao in China Association. So at last, that's an advertisement. That's an article about Confucianism and Christianity and religious freedom. And Professor Feng Ganyang and Joseph Tamny just added a new book about Confucianism and the spiritual traditions in modern China and beyond. I think it's really an important publication about the role of Confucianism in modern China, not because of me, because there are very top scholars also doing and contribute to an article. Okay, thank you.
So let's circle you around to the head of the table so people can see you. Why don't you move the chair around here? And we're not going to let you eat yet. But you said you were fine with that. You've raised so many different fascinating issues in your overview of the topic, and rather than launch in with questions of my own, I wanted to throw it open. And if you have a question or a comment, please briefly identify yourself, and that way we can get a sense of who's in the room and where people are coming from. So, Luis? Yeah.
Luis Mantilla, I'm a graduate political science PhD here at Georgetown, and also a research fellow at the Berkley Center. And I wanted to ask you talked about a religious revival in China, Confucian religious revival in China specifically. And what's the role of the state, I mean, in promoting or facilitating or restricting, or basically it seems like it would be a very different dynamic than what we would find when we talk about religious revivals in the United States, for example. If you could talk a little bit about the political part of that revival.
I think first the revival is an intellectual one, because it's the scholars who want to make Confucianism a religion and even a state religion. And they try to persuade the government to support them. There are some officials who want to support Confucianism as really a source of China's nationalism. But also you can't say who did that, and it's not so clear. Even with that statue, a lot of people discussed who sponsored that statue. It's really hard to say. I don't think, but I really don't think state is the main player of this game, but it's the intellectuals. Maybe the Sarah, the state administration for its affairs, want to promote Buddhism as a counterback to Christianity in China, but not Confucianism. it's really hard to persuade the Chinese to, to admit that Confucianism is a religion. For religion is so very marginal matter in China, so they don't want to talk it as a religion.
There were two examples in the slides that pointed to some government sponsorship or the existence of the statue, and maybe there's some background information on that, although I doubt it. There's probably a lot of mystery as to how that came to be. Maybe you can say something about that. And then you also mentioned Ye Xiaowen, the former Minister of Religious Affairs, organizing this forum of Confucianism. Is there anything more we can say about those as examples of state-sponsored initiatives?
One thing is the statue. Really, who contributes the most to the statues of Confucius in China is Tan En-jia, the Dean of the Confucian Academy in Hong Kong. So that's one of his most important job. And for the national sacrifice to Confucius every year, it's both a matter of political and economic thing. So the local government in the Shandong province at the Confucius hometown, they like to support that, but for economic reasons, because
tourism. Or what?
Because some businessmen like to to sponsor that forum, and then also the tourism. It's hard. I know most political science like to discuss the relationship between Confucianism and political ideology, but for most Chinese, that's not a fact. I have to speak again that the Chinese are very practical. We pay more attention to food and the economy than ideology. So even Marxism, yeah. But that movie about Confucius, that's a female director, so she really has some political background, and some people just guess that she got some support from the government.
Yes?
My name is Mindy Cutler. I run a little think tank that studies Japan and Northeast Asia. Actually, my background is Chinese history. I'm really looking at this as a Washington policy one type. It's a little confusing. I missed the very beginning. When you talk about Confucianism today, what does it exactly? Can you describe the interpretation? Because the new text movement in the 19th century is what was poking the finger at the Qing dynasty and destabilized it. And the state was very against the reinterpretation of Confucianism, and it's changed over time. And there's even scholars who believe a lot of what is believed today in Confucianism wasn't even written by Confucius. And there's really a democratic strain to Confucianism, real Confucianism. So how is Confucianism interpreted today? Is it ancestor worship? Is it political structure, family structure?
It's a synthesis. It's really a synthesis. We have a Chinese saying that with culture or religion as a platform, and always the economy plays the game. So, for example, with that World Forum of Confucianism in Confucius' hometown, we can see there are different interests. For the scholars, they think it's a way to promote Confucianism in the global world. And for the local government, especially for the local government, it's a way to push forward the local economy. But for someone, maybe the secretary to the president, it's really a way to promote some kind of ideology.
Maybe you could say, I think this is the thrust of the question, maybe explore a little bit debates within Confucianism, say on the scholarly side. For example, this critical debate, is it a religion at all? Is it a philosophy? what are some of the main currents or main trends of discussion about what Confucianism really means or how it might be interpreted today?
Okay.
What do they want you to believe? Is it government? Is it how you conduct your personal life? Are you still worshiping your ancestors and only your ancestors?
Maybe the most important factor is the nationalism. Chinese pay much attention to unity as a Greater China. So in traditional China, Confucianism as a political ideology, it's a way to promote the social order and the political order. So now even in modern China, after the abolishment of the civil service exam and the other political structures, someone even still want to use that traditional source to promote like harmony and order. I don't know what they really believe in fact. Even Marxism, who believes that, I don't know what's the meaning for us. It's a kind of political class when you. But in traditional China, Confucianism is not a religion. Mostly it's not. It's an intellectual tradition. So with the religion, the term in Chinese means jiao. There are 3 different meanings. It's teaching and nourishment and teaching, education, but not religion. That's a translation work because it was borrowed from Japanese, but with a Chinese character. So it seems so complex. And one reason why there is a debate about Confucianism as a religion, that's because influence of Christianity in modern China. So that debate is not a contemporary one. It went back to the early 20th century with that debate regarding state religion and religious freedom in early Republican China. But since 1980s, first, the founding director of the Institute of World Religions promoted this debate from a Marxist perspective. For him, Confucianism is a religion because Marx has argued that one of the functional religions to be the tool of the rulers. So I think Confucianism has been an instrument of the traditional political order, so it should be a religion. But since the 1990s, with that revival is really, I think, starts from the 1990s, with all kinds of discussions. That's also related to the revival of religious studies in China. So with more understanding about the term or religion, and the people try to discuss that a lot. And in the political side, that's because after the Cultural Revolution, most people lose the faith in Marxism as a traditional ideology. Well, really, I think before the Cultural Revolution, most Chinese really believed in Marxism. I think that's the truth. So now with the economic development and the opening up, so people think, there's a vacuum of faith in China. So you think try to find some inspirations from the traditional factors. And Confucian is the most important one.
Melody? Yeah.
Hi, I'm Melody Kwasama, and I work here at the center. I recently read a blog by Stephen Cordero, who's a scholar at Boston University, and he wrote the book God is Not One, which examines 8 different world religions. And he says Confucianism is a religion, and he's prepared to very strongly defend that. In this blog, he talks about basically a fight he had with an audience member who said Confucianism is not a religion. Confucius would be disgusted that anyone was trying to make this into a religion, make him anything other than a sage. But he goes think of this debate?
Academically, I think first, Confucianism is not really not a religion, but in the contemporary discussion, that's not an academic thing. That's something you need to take a stand. You need so. I really don't think Confucianism is a religion because my first academic research is about the first discussion about Confucianism as a religion. So during that period, that's from 1912 to 1917. During that period, I think the Christians took the right way to promote religious freedom and to as cultural pluralism. But for Confucian scholars, they really think there's a threat from Christianity. You know, we talked that's a Confucian revival, but there's more importantly, there's first a Christian favor. That's not a revival, that's a favor. So
A fever.
yeah,
Okay.
they really think there's a threat from Christianity as a religion and the state power behind Christianity. That's the United States as as a political threat. That's not a cultural threat. So some people really want to discuss that more and more, and it's a way to become famous in the academic area. So, but even the promoter of Confucianism as a religion or as a state religion, I didn't think he really believes that Confucianism is a religion, because
In the Western sense.
yeah, he tried to promote Confucianism as a religion because he created a system of priesthood, classics, and other religious rituals. So he created that. That's not from the Confucian classics. I think he knew that. He really knew that he created the system rather than quoted from the classics.
Ding? Yeah.
Asia Studies librarian. I just want to make a comment. As a state promotional activities these days in publishing, and there has been a very hot discussion on the soft power, and the state has been financing and promoting all of the publishing of the Confucian classics. Not only that, but also the publishing of the vernacularization of the Confucian classics, including the lectures by Yu Dan on CCTV. And not only that, the state has funded lots of academic forums and conferences in publishing local gazetteers and family genealogy, which is a clear sign of government support or promotion of the Confucian reverence for family tradition and local history. So this has been a great pressure on us because there is a huge amount of publications on Confucianism being released on the Western market in China.
When did this start?
I think it started in the last 10 years.
And is it growing from year to year, or is it stabilizing?
It's growing.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's growing.
That's nice.
And especially the last 5 years, so the government-sponsored forums and conferences on gazetteers, on family genealogy, which involve with experts and academicians and librarians.
Okay, we've got a couple more. And Carson was next, and Tony. Yeah.
Carsten Lehmann, Religious Studies Senior Lecturer in Bayreuth, and now here at the Center as a visiting fellow. And I'd like you to ask more, I'd like to ask you to tell us more about the social or organizational form of Confucianism in China today. So how is it organized? Are there different kind of organization that stands one next to the other? Are there competing organizations? Are there any organizations?
Here there are very different organizations, even in the group promoting Confucian among the scholars. They have different organizations because they have different attitudes to Confucianism, and even they support Confucianism as a religion. They have different ideas, so they try to organize different associations. And one important thing is that there are more than 2 international Confucian organizations. So mostly it's a scholars society. They can find some sponsorship from the businessmen or the local government.
So would the scholars be initiating some of the local temple ceremonies and so on? Is that, or their lineage societies, or who's working on that, on the sort of the social dimension of it?
I think that's local government.
Local government.
Like to support that.
With business and partly with an eye to tourism?
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Tony?
Just to follow up on your comment on Confucianism not being really seen as a religion, it was Matteo Ricci. He decided to be in dialogue with Confucianism rather than with Buddhism, precisely because he didn't see it as a religion, and therefore was able to enculturate his Catholic teaching with Confucianism easier than with Buddhism. And in fact, his first time he dressed as a Buddhist, but then he realized it had a negative impact, so that's when he started dressing like a scholar, and he switched his attire. But my question is more a contemporary one of, given all of your work in this area of Christianity and religion in China, this recent movement toward reconciliation, some kind of reconciliation between the government authorities and the Vatican, that seems to have stalled, and if not stalled, reversed, say, in the last 6 months or so. Do you have any perspective on that from your study? Why was there a movement toward better dialogue? I'm thinking particularly of the underground church and the patriotic church, and the way they were, from the Vatican's viewpoint and the government's viewpoint, they seem to be coming together more easily. But now there are ordinations being done without approval by one side or by the other side.
Really, I think that's last week, Berkley Center invited Cardinal Chen from Hong Kong to have a talk here, and his view is very passive. He said it's very sad. Everything is really fake. But really, the situation recently is very intense in China, because one reason is the Jasmine Revolution. That's the so-called Chinese Jasmine Revolution, like that Jasmine Revolution in the Middle East. So that's also the fact with Protestant churches, especially the Shouwan Church in Beijing. I know little about Catholic churches, but I know the Protestant church is it's in tension now. So it's a hard situation. And I know 2 top scholars who really studies. They submitted a proposal to the government to ask for more space and more freedom for that church, because the church is mainly composed of professors and students in Beijing. And in the capital city, really a lot of very famous universities and many students there. So it's really a problem now.
Yes.
I'm Kyle Vandermeulen. I work here at the Berkley Center. You've talked about it basically at a scholarly level, and I'm wondering how it's filtering down to the people, or if it's even filtering down to the general public. Who is consuming the massive amounts of publications that are coming out, and how are they approaching it? Are they using it to somehow change the way they're living? What are they getting out of reading this Confucianist text?
Or watching it on
Or
television.
watching it on television, yeah.
It's a fashion. That's a fashion show. So really, that's a fashion show to teach Chinese history and literature and the classics through the CCTV. they invite so the academic stars now. So they're not really professor traditionally in the university, but stars. So they have the company and they have the agency. So, but I know even in the popular level, there's so-called revival because some people like to sponsor the reciting of the Confucian classics. So it's really, no support from the government. Just they like to do that. They think it's a way to promote traditional ideas. Maybe that's related to the identity as a Chinese. So, what the Chinese means you are a Marxist or so. I think I'd rather to be a Confucian. So about the publications that Professor Ye has mentioned, I think there are more publications of Buddhism than Confucianism. Sarah first supported the two World Forum on Buddhism, and then a Taoist one, then a Confucian one. And I think the Confucian one, the scale is very smaller than the Buddhist Forum. There's a very grand temple, Buddhist temple, after the Second World Forum of Buddhism. It's even better than the Forbidden Palace. So I have been there to attending a conference, and very fabulous, so with a lot of money. So for me, always I think the economic factor is the most important.
So maybe a final question or maybe a topic to discuss would be religious studies in China, which is fascinating, which, like the publication business, has changed direction in some ways, and as you just mentioned, religious studies scholars are getting involved in some of the controversies as well. From your experience, what explains the growth of religious studies programs, and perhaps you can give us a sense of that growth, and is there enough interest among students and young scholars to continue this trajectory of establishing religious studies as an important discipline in the Chinese academy?
The first, I think, the practical reason is the modernization process. So in the 1980s, there's a discussion of religion as culture, and Christianity and the modernization in China with Max Weber's thesis. So that's why so many Chinese scholars concentrate on studying Christianity. And another is the spiritual factor. Really, with fast growth, economic growth, and political and social change, and then the dissolution of the totalitarian system before the Cultural Revolution. So people really have a spiritual demand. So there's a market. They really need to find something for spiritual meaning for their life. And most scholars or religious studies have some dimension of religious belief. So that's very interesting in China. Always the Buddhist scholars defend Buddhism, and the Christian scholars defend Christianity. So there's a synthesis of the identity as a scholar and a believer. So really with a religious revival since the 1980s, there's also a revival of the religious studies. And some people think that's a shift from it as a dangerous discipline to prominent discipline. That's in China from 显学 to 显学. That's a
from dangerous to prominent discipline.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the both the religious revival and the revival of the religious studies are very related to each other.
Yeah, Carsten.
So religious studies is more discipline of teaching of religion than on religion?
So they, religious studies, they do religion or they analyze religion in China? Is it from within or without? So that's
The private convictions of
That's
Buddhists
very-
or Christians
that's
shape
very-
how they teach. Yeah.
That's very funny. I can give you the examples of Christianity. There's a term in the China Academy that means the cultural Christians. Mostly the scholars of Christianity, but they like Christianity, but they are not baptized. But they like to promote Christianity, not only to study it. So also the Buddhist scholars, the scholars of Buddhism, I don't think they converted to Buddhism formally, but they really like to. They think it's very important to promote Buddhism rather than criticize Buddhism. Maybe critics, it's not the Chinese tradition. Like everything should be in harmony. So,
is it possible to name international religious studies scholars that are popular in China at the moment, or significant in the discussions in China?
we like to invite some foreign scholars to join the discussion, but that doesn't mean they really believe what he said. Like the two women from Harvard, he was invited to as a visiting professor in Peking University, and he also had a show through CCTV.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
This is the Neo-Confucian scholar based at Harvard now.
Yeah,
who's
yeah.
now gone back.
Yeah. So most students like to see him show in the TV, but I don't think many people believe what he said. For Chinese, especially with the study of Confucianism as a Chinese tradition, always Chinese think, how can foreigners understand the Confucianism as a Chinese tradition? Really, we are always very proud of that. So I like to show a few white people to show in that discussion, but like forward, like that's not really means so important.
Very good. Well, we'll have a chance, if you'd like, to continue the conversation more informally, but I'll draw this official discussion to a close. I'd like to thank you all for coming, and please join me in thanking Yi for his presentation.